Welcome to the Phil Vogel podcast. I'm Phil, and this is the only podcast focused on dealership mergers and acquisitions. We also discuss the business of the automobile business. Why, you ask? Well, because that's my business. I do dealership buy-sells. Most of the time it's a broker role, but quite often I play the role of a wingman because, well, I've been there, I've done that myself. As a third-generation car dealer, I've been advising dealers and selling dealerships since the early 2000s when I sold the last of our stores. So this podcast, we have legendary dealers. We have dealers that are making an impact today. We also have thought leaders in our industry to discuss not only transactions, but all of the elements that go into creating and adding value to both sellers and buyers. We also discuss the news and trends and things that are important, critically important to dealers today. But most of all, we want this to be a place where we can have some fun, share some great content, and have awesome guests. And before I introduce today's guest, I want to introduce you to and thank our show's title sponsor. Techyon is a new kind of DMS. In fact, well, it's way more than a DMS. Think of it as an automotive retail cloud. If you haven't heard or seen Techyon in action, I promise you will very, very soon. Techyon is a single platform that digitizes and runs your entire business and allows complete integration with our industry's ecosystem partners. And they don't charge any integration fees. Techyon's AI engine gathers insights and personalizes the consumer and dealership team members' user experiences, smoothing out these friction points that are typically involved in the transaction. Increased profitability comes as a result of Techyon's machine learning algorithms that personalize upsell and cross-sell opportunities. Multi-dealer, multi-OEM, and enterprise views deliver actionable performance indicators and KPIs. And the best part, as I said, there are zero integration fees, unlimited data access, and you own the data. It's yours. And the best part, the icing on the cake, is you can cancel your contract at any time with 30 days notice. Check out Techyon today. Techyon.com. Jeff Swickard is president and CEO of the Swickard Automotive Group. Swickard consists of 19 dealerships spread across 5 states in Washington, Oregon, California, Georgia, and most recently, Alaska. Ooh, chill ran down my spine on that. Jeff Swickard, welcome.
Thank you, Phil. I appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I mean, we had some problems touching base a few times, but you are a busy guy, and so I respect that, and I also appreciate you taking the time to jump on the podcast with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So where did we catch you today, Jeff?
Oh my gosh! To start the podcast, you had to sell me out here. I'm actually in on the Big Island of Hawaii. So yes.
Aloha.
I'm headed back today, though. Going back to work today. So yeah.
Oh, very good.
Out here and looking forward to getting back. Yes.
Excellent. So, one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on the show is because you got a great story to tell. I mean, your journey into this business is not the traditional one that we've seen as this very mature industry. I mean, you were in the telecom industry and you had a successful exit. So the question to me is, well, tell us a little bit about that exit and how the heck did you get into the car business? And what, beyond that, what made it, I mean, how did you know that this was for you?
Gosh, I mean, that's a really good question, Phil. Thank you. So I did enjoy a career in the telecommunications business, starting at AT&T, just, in college, and then ended up starting my own telecommunications company, I guess, 5 years into it. And so, which I operated primarily out of the Pacific Northwest in Texas. I ultimately sold that firm to a much larger company and I was, still under 40. So I thought I better, continue to work. And the way I was spending, I was going to spend through the money that I'd sold. So I thought I better get to work soon. So I ended up, reaching out to a few banks and asking them if they had other opportunities. I had a non-compete in telecommunications, so a couple automotive opportunities kind of popped up through a bank referral, and then I was fortunate enough to be introduced. I'm skipping parts of the story, but introduced to a Mercedes-Benz opportunity in a suburb of Portland, Oregon, called Wilsonville. And, Mercedes, the short version of the story, you guys don't think I'm always in Hawaii, but I was actually in Hawaii at the time. And I filled out my application for Mercedes. I bought a suit at the Honolulu International Airport and flew once I was invited.
A dress suit? You bought a dress suit?
Yes, a dress suit,
You took off the swimsuit and put on the dress suit. Okay.
I did. And so we had, as part of Mercedes' process, which I really appreciated, this was obviously pre-COVID, was a personal interview. So a couple weeks after you file your application with them, they interview you in person with their executive team. So, I went back to Mercedes-Benz headquarters at the time in New Jersey, met with the CEO at the time, who was Steve Cannon, and his executive team, which was an outstanding team at the time. Right. They interviewed me, and it was kind of an odd interview because they kept saying things like, well, what type of experience do you have in automotive? And I said, well, I don't have any. And they're like, why do you want to be in automotive? Well, I'm not sure because I'm not really a car enthusiast. And, and I wanted to know about the role of the dealer long term. And I thought maybe I wasn't an ideal candidate of theirs because my last car that I had purchased, or the car that I owned at the time, was a Tesla. And so, all the things that you thought would be radioactive to a manufacturer. But Mercedes was innovative enough and clever enough to, find a way to help me, operationally, A, get approved, and B, run the store. And that store turned out to be very successful for both of us. And, and now, they've offered.
You were off to the races.
I was off to the races.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a great story. I mean, it's always interesting to talk to dealers to find out how they get into it, right? I mean, especially dealers that aren't don't come up through the ranks, and so that's a compelling story. So as you gained some success in Wilsonville, you obviously developed a philosophy and some things that how you run your business. And I'm curious as to how telecom, that migration from telecom to the automobile industry, worked from a core kind of business philosophy standpoint. And were there some things that you brought from telecom to the automotive industry, and just really kind of tell us a little about how you see the business and kind of the keys around it?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, kind of customer service, guest experience, basically traverses all industries. The better you are at providing service to your customers, the more you're rewarded in any industry. And so we really believe in guest experience, and we're changing processes that aren't customer centric. So, when we first bought the dealership, we bought it from a public company, and they had a different mindset and philosophy than we did. We're a hospitality company that just happens to be in the car business, right? So we happen to be in retail automotive, but I mean, we could also be selling, other products. We like to think of ourselves as a hospitality company rather than a car dealership. So we want to be kind of the next level of that is we want to be the favorites of our customers and our guests and our employees and our manufacturer partners. And what that means to us is, really putting the employees, first, really hiring the people who we believe in, that, share our philosophy, that want to put our guest first. We measure like employee engagement, loyalty, and in return, those employees provide great experiences to our guests. And in return, those customers become, loyal kind of followers of our dealership, and we think are enthusiasts for us, for our business, and ultimately we become their favorite. And once we kind of graduate to that status, there's just a infinite amount of rewards from customers when you do that. And then right. I think the same thing about our manufacturing partners. Like, we really are interested in manufacturing partnerships, partners with manufacturers that share our philosophy. So We're not franchise hunters. We're not just out to find, the next deal. We're really looking for a partner with the manufacturer, and we want to provide, we want to have a relationship with them that they can count on us to deliver, and so that's essentially kind of our business philosophy, and we're much more, yeah.
Well, that's a great segue to my next question, which was you've amassed some awesome brands in the industry, mostly luxury. And I'm curious, you talk about the customer experience, and I think it sounds to me like you've designed a more kind of bespoke approach to the customer experience, meeting the customer where they are. Is that just try to describe it well?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that the current pillars of our businesses, at least in automotive retail, is hospitality first and foremost from our perspective, technology, and then efficiency. Right? Customers want want their process when they're buying a car or servicing a car to be very efficient, and so we believe technology is a differentiator. We think the process should not be cold, without touch. So we like the in-person aspect of the transaction. But, we believe that, when technology works right, it frees up our employees to provide a better experience for our customer. And so we're working a lot on behind the scenes technology, and it's nice to see DMS providers like Techyon and others. We use CDK and they're doing a lot of work as well. But the, around really trying to make the technology more user-friendly for our employees and our customers. So, buying or servicing a car is easier for them. And so I think when you provide a really good guest experience, when you have loyal employees, when you treat the manufacturers right, it enables our growth. And then we're also a good buyer of dealerships. We're very responsible when we buy a dealership. We onboard their employees very professionally. We work with the sellers. So we have, our goal is to have a long-term relationship, as they transition a business to us. So, with that, we've established a good reputation and get referrals from buyers, and also people who are professionals like you in the business. Professionals, like you are responsible for the majority of the transactions, and you observe a lot of transactions. And so when we're in a transaction, we want the professionals supporting the transaction to think highly of us. So they want to do business with us again.
I think you hit the nail on the head. It's interesting, your approach, because one of my questions was really around your strategy around acquisitions. And I appreciate what you're talking about with the OEMs and really looking at it as a partnership, because I think that the business itself over the last several years, we're seeing much more of a partnership. While OEMs have always talked about being the dealer's partner, it hasn't always been that way. In fact, but I'm seeing more and more OEMs embrace a relationship, actually caring what a dealer has to say, examining successful dealers' best practices, technology insights, and what have you, and then trying to leverage that out to their dealer body. And so I'm curious as to your strategy around growth. And obviously everybody wants to grow organically and build their business, and each business stand on its own and do well. But, the growth strategies are something I'm constantly talking about. And I know many that they have a kind of let's take what comes to us approach, how they look at. And while it's sometimes interesting, it's not necessarily the most strategic approach. So I think I'm curious to hear how you look at acquiring additional points and brands in different markets.
I think that's a fair point, and I agree with you. From a business perspective, we're bullish on growth organically. I mean, that's our first kind of area of focus. We want to improve performance with our existing stores and with acquisitions we make. So certainly organic growth is a certainly important component. For acquisitions, there's kind of a geographic component that makes it easier for us to to be more efficient. But we just feel like overall there's tremendous opportunities in the retail space, automotive space, and I'll get to the question about the manufacturers in a second. But in the retail automotive space over the next few years, I mean, we recognize that COVID has reminded people that their personal space is important, especially in their vehicles, right? So dealers provide a touch point, a tremendous knowledge resource for customers that manufacturers really aren't capable of providing. Now, in terms of the relationship with the manufacturer, I agree with you. I think as technology changes, the interaction with our customers changes, we have to get more cozy with the manufacturer, which is uncomfortable sometimes. But the manufacturers that are truly our partners, the manufacturers that want to see us successful, the manufacturers that have a strategy that aligns with the vision of my business, your business, I think will be the most successful over time because, this is a business where the best dealers go to the best manufacturers, and when the manufacturers, the capital follows that. So, I think that the manufacturers that we work today, for the most part, are great partners. They certainly have their own objectives, but those objectives don't always have to compete with ours. So, we've found that, I particularly, I just have to shout out a little bit to Mercedes-Benz because they took the chance on me. When I talked to people about buying a dealership, they all said, during that process that Mercedes wouldn't approve us. And, Mercedes did, and they took a chance on us, supported us, got us in business. And, now they have a store that's at 400% sales effectiveness for taking that chance. So, and then we've also grown with them. So I would identify there are the manufacturers out there that do want to partner with their dealers. They do want their dealers to be successful. And in return, hopefully the dealers want the manufacturer to be successful as well.
Yeah, and you've really nurtured the relationships with the OEMs, which I think that is essential these days for sure, for growth and for just transparency, which has been sorely lacking in our industry for many years. And I'm not just talking about transparency. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. No, I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, I think nurture might be a little strong because we certainly have our conflicts from time to time. But I mean, I would say that, I understand that the franchise might be a lifelong commitment, but I want the manufacturers to want to do business with us, right. And if the manufacturer doesn't, I'd probably sell the franchise. I mean, we just, that's how strongly we believe in these partnerships. I mean, we really believe that if the partnership is not there, then it really isn't, it isn't worth expending the effort and capital.
Sure. So talking about capital, these dealerships are, obviously very capital intensive. And most dealers are looking for, when I talk to a dealer, one of the questions, hey, Phil, tell me what's for sale. Give me an opportunity. What do you got? And while I'm not an MLS, I try to understand exactly what a dealer's focus is, like you're talking about, like what's the strategy on this? And I'm deal flow is critical, but one of the things that I'm very kind of passionate about is also the people flow, right? I mean, running these businesses requires extremely talented people, and I'm curious as to how you're approaching the acquisition of talent. Are you nurturing it organically, or are you looking outside of the business to go out and grab the rock star of the day or somebody that's got a proven track record? Or is it a kind of a hybrid of both?
I mean, I think it is a hybrid of both. I mean, obviously, we'd like to just find the thoroughbreds in the business and hire all of them. But that's not really realistic considering that we've gone from one franchise to 19 in 5 years. So, we don't really have that luxury. So, we find thoroughbreds internally and then we train them. So more than 50% of the general managers came from, our existing business. So from an internal opportunity. So for us, it's hiring from within. And then we like to promote service managers. We have, we probably have 5 or 6 GMs, general managers that came from the service side of the business.
That's so interesting that you say that, because I was talking with a dealer, I want to say, a week ago, and it seems to be a conversation that I'm having more often than not these days. And is around the people and the fixed operations. You've got mostly luxury brands, and certainly I think that you see this, but I see that fixed ops role as you're migrating people from fixed ops into general management. But I also see that fixed ops role really changing given the kind of progression and really where the dealership service and parts businesses are today. Because I think it's a much, much higher caliber and higher level of person that is required for fixed. Again, I don't think the natural, at least what I'm seeing anyway, I'm curious what you're seeing, but the natural progression from service manager to general management is not an easy one, but with the focus on fixed, it, I think, would tend to be a little bit easier.
No, I think you're right. I mean, I think that it's I think it's easier than you'd expect because the technology now on the variable side is getting better and better. And so we're able to utilize technology that helps traverse that gap. A lot of what the desk managers may have done in the past can now be done through, through CRM tools, desking tools, digital retailing tools. So, those positions are easier to learn than in the past. So I think that the service managers are, typically very well, they're disciplined. They're really focused on the customer experience. And they're typically good leaders. So not to say that people from the variable side aren't, but because I think that you can find leaders anywhere, but I think that they tend to, particularly out of the larger stores, they just tend to have a very disciplined approach to business that works very well for us. So we've promoted more service managers into general managers than variable managers into general manager.
That's exciting to hear. I say that because I really feel like that is an essential understanding of our business today. For most general managers that come out of the variable side, they don't have a grasp of the fixed still to this day. And not a grasp, they have a grasp, but they don't have the proficiency, I think, in the technology, the skill stack as it pertains to technology needed for that role. You mentioned the rapid growth you've been on. 19 stores, 5 years, right?
Yeah, so we've been in business for 6 years, but we basically started acquiring after our first year and a half.
Okay, 6 years. So that's still extremely fast, right? And that's so talk about a little bit about that. How fast, how much more do you see yourself growing in the coming years, and maybe any kind of challenges you might see and opportunities that you might see of that growth? Where do you see it?
Oh, I mean, I think it's a hard question for me to answer. Obviously, we're still acquiring, excuse me. So we're still acquiring right now. And I expect that we'll continue for the next couple years. I mean, we're very bullish on the automotive retail space for the reasons we talked about a moment ago. So I think we'll continue to grow. I think that the manufacturers also enable that growth. When you do a really good job for the manufacturer, they want you in their network. The last two, or two of the last, I guess, 4 transactions we were on actually came from a manufacturer. The opportunity didn't, but the idea of joining this manufacturer did. They sent me a LinkedIn request of all things and said, listen, we'd like to sit down and talk to you and learn more about what you're doing. And from those conversations, we were introduced through a professional like you to to these opportunities. And we ended up buying a store in their brand, and we want to continue to grow with them. So I think that, and we're based on the West Coast right now. So we see electric vehicles really playing an interesting part in that business. And so we want to grow. We want to be part of kind of the electrical vehicle kind of revolution, if you will. I think it's going to be a slow conversion, but I think that, we're seeing we're looking at acquisition opportunities that, that where electric vehicles will sell well.
Yeah, that was my next question was EVs, and they're coming, and the brands that you've got are committed to them. And it's interesting. Well, most of the brands, anyways, that I know of. So I'm curious as to how you see that. So you're looking for brands that are embracing EV technology. And so have you seen any kind of, when you look at EVs, do you see any challenges to the traditional dealership model when we see companies like Volvo or even General Motors saying, we're going 100% electric by X date? And so when you talk about EVs and the impact on the financial obligation or operations, what do you see?
Well, I mean, I think it's hard for me to comment. I mean, I am a Volvo retailer. But I think that, I think overall consumer preference is, and is changing slowly over time, right? And so like many shifts in buying habits, things don't just adjust overnight. So I think that some of the manufacturers might be kind of overly excited about how to do a few things. And I think that that'll wane over time. You might remember that, and I don't know this, I wasn't the dealer at the time, but I'm a Toyota dealer now. The Toyota Prius was originally, I guess in the late 90s, was only reserved online. And then when they started stacking up at ports, they started releasing them back to dealers. And now it's back into kind of a model that, is similar to what we're used to. So, I think that, some manufacturers are just really eager to push everything online. And I would say as a retailer, that might be too aggressive. Consumers like, I think that consumers still like the personal touch, and I think that shift in their buying habits will not change over. They will want the flexibility of being able to go into the store and buy a car kind of impulsively. Others might want to do a lot more research. So I think, I guess I don't know exactly what the plans are for all the manufacturers, but I think the manufacturers that have the closest relationships with their dealers, similar to Toyota. Toyota has fantastic relationships with their dealers. They'll work together and find a way for both to, both online, offline sales to be done effectively. The manufacturers that are just trying to circumvent their dealers, I think are going to have problems coming up relatively aggressively, and they'll miss out on selling opportunities.
And I think that beyond just the relationship and what the OEMs are trying to, and just thinking in terms of the business side of things, EVs, when they break differently than, petrol, oil-based, gas-powered cars. The components are different. Do you see any changes in the business model as for brands that are going totally EV? I mean, dealers are always looking for fixed coverage and absorption. And I'm curious as to, do you see any kind of changes in your business model, not necessarily in the online to, I think that's kind of a given these days, right? Where people are going to have an omni-channel approach, and whether they're 100% online or looking to circumvent, I don't think that, I agree that manufacturers are going to have problems with that. But EVs, will they change the way the service department, parts department operate?
I mean, I think it's a little soon to tell. I don't know. I mean, I've seen projections from the manufacturers. I've seen projections from the publicly traded companies. I don't know. I guess I don't know how to answer that question. I mean, I think that the service department is going to change, but I think the service department's changing now. I mean, if you look at the type of heavy work we did in the past versus or dealers in the past versus what we're doing now. I mean, you look at some of our stores and the quick lubes are starting to just continue to expand, and, and the express kind of service continues to expand, and our traditional work continues to contract from a customer pay perspective. So I think that if that may be accelerated with EVs. That I don't know that. It's hard for me to comment because I really don't have the specific data, and I think it's a little, but I do think it's a threat. I mean, there's probably some opportunity looming in there somewhere, but I do think it's a threat to the fixed operations for sure.
Yeah. I think that we're going to have to see some, time will tell, but Lord knows dealers are probably the most resilient people, and they certainly know how to pivot and monetize their businesses any which way they possibly can. So I kind of, before I let you go, Jeff, and this has been a great conversation, I do want to ask you, we're talking the future, and what do you see on the horizon? You know, we didn't really talk, you touched on COVID and, you know, kind of the trends that we're seeing, whether it's digital retailing, touchless pickup and delivery, and those types of things. But I'm curious of what Jeff Swickard sees get your crystal ball out for 2021 and 2022. You're bullish on the business, but what industry trends and kind of things that you think are going to maybe surprise or falter?
That's a really good question. You know, and I don't necessarily have a crystal ball. I mean, like you said, I'm very bullish on the near and midterm for automotive retailing. You know, with the country kind of coming out of a pandemic, I think over, you know, the next few months when vaccines kind of reach their critical mass, I think we'll see the economy continue to improve. There's a lot of money kind of in the economy right now. So between government spending and available capital, the markets have done well. So I think that, you know, I think diminished. And so I think that really comes down to like, you know, what is the manufacturer doing? I think with diminished supply, could probably be an issue in the long run. What's happened over the last year is supply and demand have kind of come in more into line. So the OEMs aren't building, you know, kind of this, you know, just, you know, they're building less vehicles than the market demands. And so, which has helped the profitability of dealerships. But chip shortages, other factors, you know, might affect that going forward. So, I don't know. I mean, long term, you know, manufacturers probably need to get back to, you know, manufacturing more and, you know, and keeping up with, you know, the demand. But, you know, I think it's hard to know. But I'm excited to be in automotive retailing right now, and I think what you said is exactly right. I think one of the things that I enjoy, I started the conversation with being in the telecom business, where there was a lot of great innovators. And I learned a lot. Now going into the automotive retailing business, I've learned a lot from dealers. You know, I'm fortunate enough to be on a dealer council, and I'm surrounded by fantastic, smart dealers that have taught me really how to maneuver. And I've never seen a group of people that have more ingenuity than this group of this industry. And so I have a lot of faith that dealers will continue to be successful over time. You know, partly from their creativeness, ingenuity, but also just because, you know, there is still a really strong customer demand for in-person transactions. And I think that, and, you know, coupled with fixed operations, I think dealers will continue to do well in the future. But I also think it's an inflection point where I think that dealers either need to kind of decide if they want to be part of the changes coming. Do they want to be part of kind of the electrification? Because if, you know, and some of the other changes that are coming, because if they don't, I mean, now is also a really good time to sell, not a pitch to sell, you know, to us, but just in general. I mean, values are high, multiples are high. I mean, performance from the stores in the last 24 months is high. So, you know, and there's competition for the stores that, you know, with that competitive tension brings up the value of the dealership. So, you know, we chose to divest one of our stores, even though we're continuing to grow, because it's just such a great time to sell.
Right. Jeff, you've delivered beyond what I had expected, and I appreciate you coming on the show. And it was fun to talk to you. It was fun to finally meet face-to-face virtually. And I appreciate your time and perspective and really your candor. It's very much appreciated. And I'm sure that our audience and viewers do as well. So I want to say thank you, Jeff Swickard. I appreciate you. And I also want to say thank you to our sponsor, Techyon. And I also want to say, see you next time.